All right. So I did one of these on Patreon after seeing Interpol on Saturday night, but I thought I would, yeah, extend it to YouTube and give a short review, which I've not really done of any gigs I've been to, I don't think. So yeah, here it goes. Also, had someone in the comments asking for more Interpol content. So here you go, mate. So I mean, yeah, Interpol are a band that I've liked for a long time. Like like most people, really. I won't sound like a super fan that knows the albums inside out, but definitely revisited them a lot more since they've been doing these anniversary tours. They did one of the first album a few years ago, and I managed to see that played at a festival in France, Le Route de Rock. It was still in my drinking days. I remember getting right to the front for that one. I did about 4 beers stashed around my person, which was amazing. Wish I could remember a bit more of it, but yeah, it was definitely very good. But it's a band that I've not seen inside a venue before, and I feel like their sound would be real suited to it. So when this tour was announced for Antics and they were playing near me, I thought, no brainer, gotta go see it. Ticket was 50 quid, which now in the current climate, I think Oasis have just blown everything apart, haven't they? I mean, I think it's about 50 quid all in all to be sat down, which I was quite glad I was sat down in the end. I didn't know whether I would be, but yeah, it was a good seat to have just to the left of the stage. But yeah, booked that back in July. So what's that? Around 5 months to wait for that. And I was supposed to go with my mate, but he let me down because he realised it was his mum's birthday a couple of weeks ago. So had to sell his ticket on Twickets to get him some money back. And sold it to a guy called Graham, who didn't turn up until Interpol came on. So no chance to really banter with him. Didn't get to know him. So Graham, if you're watching this, I apologise for not being more social, but you are either really, but I think we both wanted to watch the band at that point. Anyway, enough about Graham. I mean, I'm a bit out of practice with gigs, to be honest. Don't go to as many as I should do these days. And when you're going by yourself, it's a bit of a different dynamic, which I was on Saturday, even though I knew people at the gig. I'm not trying to show off or out, but so yeah, I went down there, got there about 8 to the venue, and it was pretty easy going at that point. I didn't think too much about what time Interpol would be on, but it turned out they're going to be on at 9. But anyway, I went to my seat. Well, before I got to my seat, I went for a beer. Because I was driving, I went to get non-alcoholic beer, which there seems to be some confusion about. I clocked on that they charged me for a full pint of normal San Miguel. So that was 8 quid for a bottle of non-alcoholic San Miguel. I actually went back when I was just about to leave. I realized, went back and I asked her, is there a price difference between non-alcoholic beer and the pint? And this person this unrelated staff member who hadn't served me said, yeah, it's a good £1.50 difference. So I just left it, to be honest. I thought, I'm not going to let it ruin the night. Anyway, that's far too much on that. Then I went to my seat, watched a support band called Dust. Um, Not really for me. Very professional sounding. Like they had a saxophonist, if that's how you say it, which is interesting. But the overall sound didn't interest me that much. It was all a bit. It was that phrase, "all something, no trousers" for me a little bit. For some reason in my head, I imagined that this band Dust would sound a lot like I imagine Liam Gallagher's son's band to sound like for some reason. Just like all the gear, but not really saying a lot. Mind you, I've not heard the recordings of the songs, so I could be speaking ill of them. And they were a young band from Australia, so best of luck to them touring with Interpol. I mean, someone must think they're good, so fair play. Then they went off, and then obviously Interpol's stage setup was getting put together. But almost immediately before that happened, a big sheet got put over. I'll put a picture in here again. Big sheet got put over the front of the stage, which is already quite intriguing. Then all the gear got set up behind it, which I quite enjoyed that anyway. It's like, then it adds a bit of the show element, doesn't it? If you're not just looking at people setting up something. And then when the band came on, surprisingly, the sheet stayed up. I didn't know what was going on with the sheet. It provided a bit of suspense. Obviously, cracked into Next Exit from Antics, which obviously they were playing in full. I mean, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen them at this point, I don't know how many more gigs they've got to go on this tour. I know they've got to play London soon. Yeah, the sheet eventually came down during Evil, and I was discussing it with someone at work today who went to the gig, and I didn't know if it was deliberate or not, but the sheet came down and it didn't drop on one side. It kind of just like folded down like a curtain. And he was like, "Oh yeah, it's almost definitely supposed to just drop off fully." So that didn't happen, and there were a few stage hands running around in a bit of a panic to get that pulled down. But yeah, that happened halfway through Evil when it like kicked in for the second half of it, which is very cool. I mean, they sounded great. I was talking to someone else I knew who went to the gig, and they said they thought the sound at that venue wasn't great in general, and that historically it wasn't great for sound. And I mean, I was sat to the left of the stage as you look at it, so I was getting a lot of the guitar on that side. But I kind of thought that was par for the course, but not really sure. If I was being selfish, I could have done with some more of Paul's vocals in the mix, if we're getting technical. But I can't argue really. It was superb. They've played the Antics album all the way through, and I've been hammering that in the car recently, so it's just pretty great to see it live. They also didn't have any screens behind them, which I thought was quite good. They just like had this quite impressive lighting setup, which made me think of previous podcast Ed Warren, lighting designer, who's actually designed for Interpol before. I don't know if you had any input on this one. I was thinking as well, he told me that a lot of the lighting now is pre-programmed, but I was wondering how they can't anticipate for the gap between songs. So now I didn't ask him at the time, which is a shame. But if you're watching this, Ed, maybe put in the comments how they like anticipate for the gap between songs and when they start and how the lighting links up with that. I'm sure there's some very good technology these days that can probably pick up on the song itself and just match itself in with the lighting. But yeah, anyway, some very good lighting indeed. I'm sure there's some spectacular pictures on Instagram. Then they went off after playing the album in full. I think my personal favorite song they played from the Antics album was "Not Even Jail." Just really got into that song recently. And obviously the big songs like "Evil" and "Slow Hands" can't really go wrong with. So yeah, and "Come Here." I mean, it's a great album. I mean, Paul didn't say a lot over the mic. He was wearing shades and a nice leather. Didn't say an awful lot to the crowd, but you don't really need to when you got their repertoire. But he did say we're going to come back and play a lot more songs, which they did. So we'll have a look at the songs they played in the second half because I wasn't familiar with them all, to be honest. So let's have a look. So, yeah, Setlist FM, great website. Um, but yeah, you can see obviously Antics then. And this second half here, I'd be lying if I knew more than half of these songs. I think obviously Obstacle One at the end there would have been a highlight from this little bit. Um, I quite like the Rover. Not everyone's a fan from people I speak to, but there we go. But yeah, I'm not familiar with all the later albums really, so poor from me, but still enjoyed it, sure. Then it went off again, and to the delight of a young woman sat near me, who was screaming quite vociferously for PDA towards the end of the second set. And she was just shouting play PDA, or screaming it to be honest. And they came back on, and I think everyone knew what they had in store. And Paul was tuning his guitar and did one of the coolest things I've ever seen, to be honest. He just slowly turned around to the drummer, gave a thumbs up with his shades on, and the drummer then kicked into the drum beat of PDA, and it was pretty spectacular, I have to say. Very ace to see that live inside a venue. So yeah, perfect finish, really. Yeah, and had everyone on the edge of the seat, quite literally. So yeah, and then on a personal note, I just kind of wandered out casually. Quite coincidentally, bumped into people I knew outside that I knew were there, but I didn't know where they were going to be. So they were literally outside as I walked out. So I had a quick chat with them. And my plan was to go to the after party in Manchester City Centre at Yes for the New York Indie Night, as it was called. So I went back to get my car. I thought I might be cutting it fine, but it turns out it was more than fine, and it was locked in the car park for the night. So so because I had a sensible, sober head on, I thought, well, I'll get the last bus home now rather than going into town for an hour and getting a 20 quid taxi back. But in hindsight, I probably should have just gone. Got a bit of FOMO that lasted a while, to be honest, because apparently they played some absolute bangers there. So maybe I should have just taken the hit on the taxi. But yeah, interested to know if you've been to see him on this tour. Are you a big Interpol fan? I mean, someone in the comment on my last video said that I'd had my pants pulled down by paying 50 quid for Interpol, but I was quite happy to be honest. Well, yeah, what did you make of it if you went? Do you think it was a good set list? I guess the only song that I would have missed out on personally, off the top of my head, would be Untitled. Um, Obviously that was a big one for the first album anniversary tour, so won't kick off too much. But they played PDA, so throw that in for a bit. I think over the next year or two, there's going to be some pretty big album anniversary tours and gigs. Are there any you looking forward to? Any that you want to happen that you haven't seen happening yet? Have your say in the comments and hit the bells and stuff. Cheers.